beauty from ashes dried every tear.
There is a dangerous lie out there that tells us that if we are doing all of the right things, like journaling, praying, staying busy, that we should feel better. And when those things don't work, or at least, for me, we are left asking, what is wrong with us? And the answer is nothing. Welcome back to Beauty from Ashes. And today I want to talk about the pressure of how healing is supposed to look and what coping skills actually are, which are the tools that help us carry our pain. One of the hardest parts of grief and trauma is realizing that what helps one person heal may do absolutely nothing for someone else. And sometimes I think people forget that that's okay. So many people are quick to offer their advice. They'll tell you to stay busy. Just keep praying. Maybe you should journal. Have you tried exercise? And a lot of other things. And while all of those things can be helpful, they're not universal. Healing is not a one-size-fits-all process. In fact, it's really just something very deep and personal. One of the most important things I learned was that coping skills are not about making the pain disappear. They are designed to help you carry the pain in a way that it does not destroy you. And so for some people, coping might be a long walk because movement helps, quiet the mind. And for others, it may be just sitting in the quiet morning stillness, for a little while where life just doesn't demand anything. Some people will journal, others find peace in painting. Your coping skills could be listening to a certain style of music or even attending a support group of some sort, where others who, like you, just want to get back to feeling normal. But then again, what is normal? Because normal is such a subjective word when it comes to people and emotions and culture. But when you spend time with people who don't expect you to pretend that you're okay, it really does help. In all honesty, coping skills can be as simple as creating just a small daily routine, or even just any one thing that's going to provide you with just a small moment of stability. And to some, it may seem insignificant, but when you're dealing with grief, the little routines that you create, they remind your brain that life is still moving forward. even if it's just one small step at a time. But while we talk about coping, we also have to remember there are unhealthy coping skills. And sometimes people will numb themselves during grief and after trauma with alcohol. It can look like overworking, doom scrolling, which I used to do this a lot in the beginning. And then even isolation can be one of those things. And while all of those things can provide a temporary moment of relief, they usually leave us feeling more disconnected later on. So back in 2019, I was going through a very difficult time with a relationship that was ending. And I'll talk more about that like in some future episodes. But I found myself downing a bottle of wine almost every night. And while I didn't become addicted, thank goodness, it was definitely what I was using to cope. And once I started therapy, I realized that I needed to find a healthier alternative. And I eventually did, but I share that part of my past to say that when I lost Gavin, I quit drinking altogether. I knew that even if I started just having like a drink to take the edge off or to, get some sleep, I knew it was going to become my way of coping. And so rather than take that chance, I just decided that even my social drinking, which was few and far between because I have never really had much of an alcohol tolerance, but I decided that that was no longer going to be an option for me. Would it have been easier to down a bottle of wine over getting up every single morning to work out, even when I didn't feel rested? Probably. But healthy coping is not always easier in the moment, but it does help us heal. And it helps us heal rather than just simply helping us escape, if that makes sense. And I really wish more people like understood this. But coping skills might change over time. What helped during the first few months may not be what's going to help you like a year or two later. Healing is not linear. And I know you guys have probably all heard that. You may have even heard me say it several times, but the way we cope isn't either. So if you've tried something that didn't work or isn't working, don't assume it's because you're failing. It only means that you're still learning. You're still learning what your mind, your body, in your heartbeat. And that is okay. Like, you have to keep exploring, keep giving yourself permission to try something new. Healing is never going to be about finding a perfect coping skill. It's really just about finding the ones that help you breathe a little easier, maybe sleep a little bit better, smile more, and just slowly begin to believe that after everything that you've been through, life can still hold moments of peace and joy. And so if you're listening today and you're still in search of what works for you, please, don't give up. I say this because I also have lived this. I've mentioned before how it took me about a year to leave my house alone. And it all began with a short 5-minute walk outside. Each week, those walks increased in time. And for a good while, I could not function without taking my walk. And today I still need my walks, but the difference is I don't fall apart when life gets busy, or like the last couple of days, maybe the weather's not cooperating. And so instead of my walk, I'm able to find other ways to move my body to relieve stress, and or deal with whatever emotions I may be processing at that specific time. But in the beginning, it had to be this specific thing, talking about my walk, or I was just going to lose my shit. And now, with time, I am able to swap one for another when life, happens, or suddenly you get a curveball out of nowhere. Do I prefer my walks? Of course. I think that's always going to be my number one, because there's just something healing about nature. But I also don't give up my workouts. And my workouts may be for other reasons on like the health spectrum, but that is also a place that shortly after losing Gavin that I poured myself into, because I was able to make a playlist of all of the songs that I knew Gavin liked. Well, probably not all of them, but a lot of them. Songs that reminded me of Gavin. And then I had reached out in the early days, and I think I had put on social media if any of his friends had songs they that connected them to Gavin in some kind of way, if they would share them with me. So I made a playlist, and I would listen to that during my workouts. And still to this day, while I'm, weight training, that's the playlist that I use every time I work out. Sometimes it's the smallest habit, or, the quietest moment that becomes, the very thing that helps carry you through the darkest moments of your life. Because coping is not our final destination. I'd rather view it as like the bridge. It's what keeps us grounded, but it's grounding us while we do the heavy work of surviving. And once you find those little ways to breathe again, a new question comes up. And that question is usually like, what comes next? How do we go from just carrying the pain to rebuilding a life around it? How do we take the broken pieces, the life that we did not ask for, and begin to craft something meaningful from them? And that is where we are going next week. Hope you will join me next week for episode 12. And episode 12 is what I am calling my series finale, if you will. I've titled it Finding Purpose After Tragedy. And if you think about the title, that's what's to come. And I'll explain all of that next week. I have a lot of plans and thoughts of how I want to move forward with where I am now. So until then, take a deep breath, give yourself grace, and just remember to honor whatever it is that your heart needs today. And so I want to thank you all for listening. And if you know someone who needs some encouragement, please share this with them. And I'll see you guys next week.
So alone, your open heart became a comforting home. No more hiding, no more holding it in. Just brave new chapters where healing can begin. Some days we stumble, some days we crawl, but knowing we're not truly lost, we answered the call. For every human story, raw and true, we find our strength and courage anew.